Good afternoon, welcome to UK Column News. It is the 14th of October 2014 and it's just gone 1 o'clock. Myself, Louise Collins, Brian Garish and Nick are here in Plymouth. Mike is upstairs in a blue jumper working on the newspaper. Hello.
Just for the chat box.
Just for that's just for the chat room, yeah.
Well, the weather across the country variable. We've got some blue sky and sunshine here in Plymouth and other places, and overcast, cool and rainy in mid-Wales. We haven't got anywhere further north than that, so that's as much as you get. Over to you, I think.
Okay. Ebola.
We should all be very frightened.
We should all be extremely terrified. We should all be lining up waiting for the vaccine. And today, passengers at Heathrow are going to be screened on arrival into Heathrow, those flying in from Africa. Gatwick and Eurostar passengers are going to be screened later on in the week. The 111 emergency line is also going to be of service to help authorities and healthcare workers identify possible sufferers, and experts are claiming this epidemic is the most severe emergency of modern times. Haven't we heard that before with swine flu and bird flu and
SARS,
yeah, and everything else?
So I don't know how many passengers come in a day on the Eurostar train, but it's got to be quite a few. So we've got this absolutely imminent, serious emergency. But we'll start it a little bit later in the week. So we'll get a few thousand.
We'll give it a go at Heathrow and see how we get on. And here's just a picture of what's going on in some other countries where they're scanning. So expect to be going through, well, we said we didn't want it in this country, the good old TSA body scanning. But hey, if it's to keep you safe and keep Ebola away, it's going to be worthwhile scanning
I
you.
Think people should just come in naked and then basically they could do a full medical examination while you were queuing.
Exactly.
Solve the whole problem.
Yep, could well be. So I had a look last night. Well, I didn't. It was the night before last. I got sent a video of CNN apparently using crisis actors or paying people to roll around in the street, and it's pretty incredible. This is actually from the New York Times, a report by Ben Solomon, and here we have a gentleman. You do need to see the video, but I just got some stills from it. So here we have a guy supposedly dying of Ebola. I mean, to me, he looks pretty healthy. He's not, you know, his skin looks pretty clear. He looks okay. So then we move on to the next slide. Oh, just when the cameras are off, and there he is. There he is, sitting up.
And this is New York Times.
This is New York Times, and the next picture.
So this is being, sorry to just interject, this is being put across as absolute mainstream world media.
World news, yeah. And what's interesting is you see whether the doorway's going in. Okay, this is supposed to be the JFK hospital, and the story was that this gentleman who was rolling around on the floor, who couldn't move, dying of Ebola, his supposed parents are just there walking up to him, keep pouring water into his mouth. Okay, the door's locked, but then at one point they scan across and there's a driveway. They're saying the hospital's locked, no one can come in. And then to the left of people's screens, there is actually a driveway with gates completely open. But they're making out that the hospital's closed off. And at the end of the scene of this video clip, you actually see the guys who are supposedly his parents walking away with a big wad of cash.
So where can people actually go to see this?
They go onto YouTube and just put CNN crisis actors Ebola hoax. And then this was another one. This actually did come out of CNN. Here was a little boy and he's walking into shot, and he carries on, he walks along, and then if you move to the next shot, Brian, that's the same little boy was just walking down that CNN were using of the Ebola crisis of children dying on the street, and it was actually that little boy just pictured there. But apparently CNN, shortly after people phoned in, the viewers phoned in, it was taken down. But somebody who has this video has managed to grasp all of these.
Right. And on the basis of this, we're now moving British troops around.
We're moving British troops around.
There's been a Royal Navy unit sailed full of Land Rovers, I believe, and they're going down to join other British troops who are going to do what? We're not too sure.
I don't know. I mean, yeah, okay, this could be really serious, but I think if ever there was a time now to start empowering yourselves by getting vitamin C inside you, vitamin D. I mean, they're saying it comes from fruit bats. Fruit bats don't produce their own vitamin C, neither do human beings. So that could be one little clue of everyone to start taking decent, good vitamin C, preferably maybe from Clive de Carle.
And what we're being told about this whole thing, but somebody's got a pretty cynical view here.
Yes, this was somebody sent me this on Facebook, and this is coming from America. They're going, step 1, Ebola comes to America. Step 2, the virus spreads. Step 3, the government decides to quarantine the general public for their own safety. Step 4, cities go under martial law. And the last step, people are forced out of their homes into FEMA camps, and the extermination begins. So that was sent to me yesterday.
So a lot of the mainstream press will say all of that, of course, is conspiracy theory, and I'll come on to a bit more of that in a minute. But you also wanted to talk about diet.
Oh, this is really sad,
if
especially as I have a
lover.
horse. I have horses, and this broke my heart. And now, first thing, I want to show this picture. Now, this picture actually, this horse doesn't have an eye, and I said to Brian, what is the relevance of them putting up a picture of a horse and its eye is missing? Now, that picture has vanished now. It is no longer on the Daily Mail. It's no longer on the... They put nice little Dartmoor ponies up. So that was the first thing I noticed, that why have they put a horse up there with no eye? We go on to the story. Apparently, a new fitness snack has been launched, a bag full of horses. And it's being made in Belgium, and it's apparently made with Belgian horses. And this bag full of snacks costs £2.50 a bag. And according to the article, Princess Anne has given her full support for eating the meat. But this is what upset me more. This lady here, she is head of the Dartmoor Hill Pony Association. Her name is Charlotte Faulkner. Now, Dartmoor is only literally around the corner. I walk up there on a weekly basis with the kids. The kids enjoy seeing the ponies. And she is basically claiming it will make herd owners want to keep ponies for longer if they can make more money out of them being used for meat. And this really, really saddened me, especially as she is standing there holding horse meat steaks, and she's supposed to be looking after the ponies on Dartmoor.
Do you think this is another mainstream news article to wind people up, to get people
Probably, yeah.
upset and anxious and whatever? I wonder how much of a story there really is behind it.
No.
We will see. But much more serious things, Mr. Blair's being targeted.
Indeed. Okay, I think many people of us are going to be branded as terror threats now, if we aren't already. And as the Standard here reveal that Tony and Cherie may have been the target of a terror plot. Errol Insadel is on trial at the Old Bailey, apparently, at the moment, accused of terrorism and possessing a document entitled bomb making. And the Old Bailey heard how Mr. Insadel was arrested. They found a piece of paper in his glasses case with one of Tony Blair's property addresses written down inside of it.
I'm going to say allegedly, because of course these are now secret trials, so who knows what the actual truth is inside the court.
Yeah.
This is the danger of the close down, whether it's based on terrorism, or we're going to have secret family courts, or if Ken Clarke gets his way with Lord Faulkner, I believe that we're going to have secret courts with just a judge in across the thing. So why would anybody want to target Tony Blair? That's the question.
Beggars beyond, doesn't it? Beggars belief. Okay.
Well, terrorism is the
more
thing,
terrorism,
isn't it?
exactly. This I picked up from RT this morning, and it's under their Operation Edge section. And apparently security agencies are very concerned that jihadis that are returning from fighting in Syria for IS could use toxic chemicals in other parts of the world in order to create mass terror. Apparently the Middle East Review of International Affairs published some disturbing pictures on Sundays, and they are apparently supporting accusation that IS militants have already deployed chemical weapons against Kurdish fighters. Now, what interested me is RT's comment on this. They're saying, have you seen these pictures? Does this look like evidence of chemical wounds to you? Nick says it's quite possibly that wounds don't come up, but
with certain types
of chemical, but there is clearly nothing to suggest chemicals have been used on the victim in this picture. They've also gone on to say these deaths apparently through the chemicals were thought to have been in July, but why all of a sudden is it only coming to light now, and that they're only being told of this now? And RT then go on to say, if it turns out to be Islamic State, where do you think the terrorists obtained their chemical arsenal? Very interesting little read if people want to go and have a look. It's more fear-mongering by security services and bosses.
Seems to be a pattern, doesn't it? It follows the previous pattern of Assad using chemical weapons. Nick, I wonder whether you just pop that one back up on screen. I just noticed there on the right-hand side we've got recommended US top brass eye Syria no-fly zone. And I'm going to be a little bit cynical and say, isn't it interesting that was the key objective of the last go against Assad, was to get control of the air, which of course strips Assad of any power, military power he could still have left. And here we are, it's slowly popping up again. But you're quite right, up comes toxic weapons again. We've heard all this before. And quite interesting to have a look at this website, the Investigative Project on Terrorism. Now, just using this as an example, they've got an article here where the Israelis have been commenting on what the Israelis think the risk is from the Islamic State and Al-Nusra front in Syria. And this is the key thing, is that according to this article and the Israeli spokesman, the Israelis estimate that the radical Sunni jihadi elements do not pose an immediate threat to the Israeli border or to national security. And the reason they give is they're too busy fighting Assad and the Shiite militias and all the others. So very interesting that here we would say, well, Israel would be feeling particularly vulnerable, but they're saying, well, actually, we're watching what's going on, and these people are too preoccupied. But they say, however, these organisations will pose a very real threat to Israel, and the smart thing to do is to prepare for it now. And of course, what are we seeing? Well, we are seeing David Cameron ramping up that we're all going to be dead in our beds tomorrow from these people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Whereas the Israelis are sitting there on the doorstep and they're seeing a different picture. So we're just saying, what's the truth? But how big is the threat? Well, we don't know. So let's come back to this man, because we alone, the UK column is the only news source that was picking up Brooks Newmark after he said categorically that Assad had used chemical weapons, and when challenged on that, he produced no evidence. He simply referred to reports that, if you read them, talked about allegations. And what was this man actually doing when he was meeting General Idris from the Free Syria Army? Well, now we can see this man in a different light. And actually, we're not making a joke of this, because let's remember Brooks Newmark, a senior Tory politician. He was boasting about having tea with Assad and his wife. He was boasting about meeting with General Idris on the Turkish-Syrian border. Here he is, the 19th of August. And yet nobody knows what discussions actually went on.
No.
Who was he meeting? And the key bit here is, of course, that this organisation was linked through to these Al-Nusra fighters, and also with links to Al-Qaeda. Now, we've put this up before, but all of this stands because we simply do not know what is actually going on in the area, or what Brooks Newmark was there for. So he was mixing with people linked to terrorist organisations, Al-Nusra and Al-Qaeda, and he has never been held accountable for who he met, what was discussed, and why he was promising General Idris that bombs would be raining down on Assad. So there it is. These are his words. He was talking about the links through to Al-Nusra. And as we've just seen, of course, the Israelis very worried, apparently, about Al-Nusra. And we've got David Cameron saying these people, once they've presumably finished their fighting amongst themselves, are going to murder us all in our beds. So interesting that the Spectator has suddenly popped up to defend Brooks Newmark. He's been in mental agony. Apparently he's going to check into a psychiatric clinic because he says clearly he's ill. And Damian Thompson here, we just remember what we're dealing with. This is a British politician. And let's see what Damian has to say. About 3 years ago, someone suggested I sign him up. This is Brooks Newmark as a Telegraph blogger. And we had coffee in Portcullis House. The blogging thing didn't come to anything because he was a government whip. So now we've got this man not only involved in this very important overseas politics, but also he has been responsible for whipping other politicians into the party line. So he says, we talked, but the man I met on that day was ill. 3 years ago, he meets Brooke Newmark and he says this man is ill. He was in a terrible state. So if he was mentally ill, was he mentally ill when he met General Idris? So we've got a man, clearly a security risk, clearly got major problems in his life, and he was overseas meeting General Idris, who he says himself was linked to terrorists. Was he mentally ill when he stated that Assad had used chemical weapons? Because that's what he said. It is fact that Assad used chemical weapons, when in fact we now know, of course, there has been no evidence. And was he just acting as himself while he was mentally ill, if that was the case? Or is he just really a pervert in power? And what is it? What's going on here?
Something not very nice, and I'm really disappointed actually. And you could have really done something with him and Chris Bryant together. I put it up on Facebook and I had great responses, but we could have really done things with those images.
Well, it's part of the LibLab con, isn't it?
It is.
That basically get your clothes off, expose yourself, take pictures of yourself in your underpants, and you qualify to be a government minister.
I think so, and maybe the way he was posing in that picture, he'd just had a bit of a whipping himself, maybe.
Could have had. We'll leave that bit there, but we will come back to this gentleman, the chairman of IPSO. So here he is. He calls himself independent, Sir Alan Moses. And of course, he was the man very quick to state publicly that the sex sting on Brooks Newmark was absolutely terrible, matter of urgent public concern. And in fact, he prejudged the Sunday Mirror, because he said one of the things about the code is that newspapers should think beforehand. There we are. This is where it took place with the Media Standards Trust at the Tory Party conference. We've shown this before, but what we wanted to say to the audience today is that having emailed Sir Alan Moses to say, how can you possibly claim to be independent when you're prejudging somebody? Sir Alan Moses is chairman of the complaints board itself. How can you prejudge the Sunday Mirror, and how can you possibly be independent when you're giving a private brief effectively to the Media Standards Trust with their vested interests? But here he is. This is the Spectator man, Damien Thompson, and you might like to go to Wikipedia. Apologies, Wikipedia, I should have put up the source for that. But if you have a look at this man, apart from the fact he's done a degree in sociology of religion from the London School of Economics, so he's presumably well versed in psychiatric matters. But if we have a look down at the bottom, he's written 2 books about apocalyptic, belief, and one about conspiracy theories or counter knowledge, which he describes as misinformation packaged to look like fact. So he does a degree there in sociology of religion, but now he's writing books about conspiracy theory, theorists and counter knowledge.
He's very feminine.
Yes, okay, we'll move on.
Okay.
So talking of the conspiracy theory, it's very interesting that the Independent here produced a whole article about the Simpsons predicting the Ebola outbreak back in 1997. And they're saying, well, some people on the internet are actually stupid enough to believe this, when of course what most people are doing is asking questions and what the probabilities are. But this is what the Independent had to say. Is there something we're not being told? Is it by pure chance or coincidence that the Simpsons would do predictive programming? Interesting they use that phrase, isn't it?
Very.
There's been numerous predictions from The Simpsons which revealed futuristic events which came to pass. So they say, well, this is all a coincidence, but what they're highlighting is an amazing lot of coincidences.
They did have something come up on 9/11 when Bart's holding magazine, and this was a few years before 9/11, and he was holding up a comic with 9/11 put on it and the Twin Towers as well. So
Yeah.
I think the Independent.
So the Independent then says, unbelievably many people lapped it up. Thank you for telling us the truth. And they then are full of scorn. Do you think we've done this deliberately? So for manipulating the public, it's a pretty incredible piece of
definitely,
what by the Independent? I don't know. Meanwhile, the BBC can waste a bit more money.
Yeah, a cost of £300 per person. 783 employers at the BBC were put on a training course on how to use an iPhone. That works out at £220,000 of licence fees payers' money being spent on how to use the iPhone. According to the Daily Mail, the BBC has also spent £2.5 million on purchasing 4,000 iPhones, 400 iPads and 800 MacBooks. Maybe they spilt wine over there, This works out at approximately £200 a month, but these figures are nothing compared to the bill with O2 that the BBC have their network provider, but we haven't had details of how much the bills and contracts are with O2 and BBC.
So the BBC, unlimited public money to spend as it wants to there. Still no progress on Jimmy Savile, of course.
No.
Well, that brings us on nicely to child abuse. And, of course, Melanie Shaw is still in prison. We calculated that it's 81 days today. As we've reported at the last, at the last court hearing, which was Friday, there was discussion about evidence again, and from the public present, it was obvious that the Crown Prosecution Service still has not got any substantive evidence. And as a result of that, they were even trying to discuss what the charge really should be. So it was arson, but now it's something to do with revenge attacks. And public present in the court said it was fascinating to watch the either incompetence or I don't know what it is of the Crown Prosecution barrister as he was trying to sort of, construct things on the spot. So let's come back. This is the state of Britain today. If you're an abuse victim and you run into the Crown Prosecution Service, they're quite happy to use you as a statistic to boost their court figures. And let's have a look at the individuals clustered around Melanie Shaw. This is the sort of lineup that you're faced with if you're a victim. These people are not helping. Well, maybe Chris Leslie is a bit now, but the rest of them have all effectively helped to put Melanie in prison.
What's Chris Leslie done then so good recently? Because
well,
it's taken time if he's done anything.
He has started to put a bit of pressure on people, and he has written several letters of support to Melanie. So he won't discuss with members of the public exactly what he's doing, but it does appear that he has finally started to ask some questions around the place. Now, we know that by Friday last week, Theresa May knew personally, Chris Grayling knew, so we had so-called heavyweights in government beginning to understand what was going on. What's the situation at the moment? Well, we think that there's another imminent bail application, so there is a possibility that Melanie could be released on bail shortly, but we're not going to raise hopes because we haven't got the evidence to back that up at the moment. So interesting that the Peterborough Telegraph decided to report the protest outside Sodexo's HM Prison, Peterborough, and we were kindly sent this page through. And we just thought we'd do a little bit of analysis for people, because if you look at this, Melanie is given 25%, a quarter of that page, along with these other topics. So child abuse, victim in prison, being appallingly treated. There are people committing suicide. There's a lady who aborted twins as a result of what appears to be a drugs mix-up inside the prison. Here's Melanie. She gets the same quarter of page as a gentleman retiring after 30 years. And look at the detail of the write-up on Martin. And then, of course, we've got villagers' joy at Holmes' rejection. But this is the other thing. This is half of the protesters.
Yeah.
So you don't put in a photo to actually show the number of people that went there because they were concerned. I believe this is a very carefully crafted page. This is the text underneath the Melanie protest. So protesters gathered outside HM Prison Peterborough to demand the freedom of a woman they believe is wrongly locked up. A group of around 30 believe Melanie Shaw is being imprisoned unfairly on a charge of arson with intent to endanger life. Well, of course, she isn't in prison. She's on remand. So that's inaccurate. And then it's balanced with this absolutely disgusting and banal statement from Sodexo. There was a peaceful process outside the period. It didn't disrupt the running of the prison, i.e. the prison carried on bullying Melanie and failing to give her medication.
Shame on the Peterborough Telegraph. Shame on you.
But this is the bit. We phoned the paper up and, my goodness, the editor. Now, I don't know whether this gentleman was the head editor or one of the sub-editors, but he got pretty stroppy when we asked him some simple questions about, you were given the detail of this case, why didn't you do some proper investigating?
And he got moody, did he? He
got very moody indeed. Yeah, well, have a look at this, and thank you very much to the viewer who sent this through. A commission of an independent review into rape investigations. So the Metropolitan Police and Crown Prosecution Service have today, Monday the 9th of June, announced the commission of an independent review into how both agencies investigate and prosecute allegations of rape. And who's involved? Well, Commissioner Sir Bernard Haugen-Howe, Director of Public Prosecutions Alison Saunders, and they've appointed Dame Eilish Angelini to conduct a victim-centred review, which will help both organisations build on improvements. So here's the team. And we say, trust us to conduct a victim-centred rape review, except where Melanie Shaw is concerned, with the CPS, sorry, there's a C disappeared there, create charges based on no evidence. And as we've said many times, you really can't make it up. So here's the other man, Robert Green. He's now on his 147th day of effectively house arrest. And what's his crime? Trying to protect children. So we are not going to forget Robert. He's still waiting to see what's going to happen with his court case, which is not due until January 2015. Meanwhile, north of the border, we're waiting for Alex Salmon to really give the go-ahead for an independent investigation in Scotland into child abuse. That's it, isn't it? You pause and you don't really know what to say then.
There's nothing you can say.
Yeah. Bill Gates then, cheer us up.
Yeah, right. So I know we've covered this in the past, but I think as Bill and his missus are pushing the Ebola vaccine, it's worth remembering that they are actually under investigation for illegally testing vaccines on children in India. And I also want to remind viewers of the main players in the vaccine drive in the African countries. And here we have Gavi, PATH, World Health Organization, and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. They actually fund also and put a lot of money into PATH and Gavi, and these are the main players who are going to be out there pushing vaccines on the African children. Ebola. Okay, next one. Right. I'm really delighted that this has made the mainstream media. It's literally, I think, it's a real massive breakthrough for them. The Telegraph here reporting on a Professor Christopher Exley from Keele University, which is in Staffordshire, and he has said exposure to aluminium causes deposits in the brain. The presence of aluminium in the brain should be a red flag, alerting us all to the dangers of aluminium. He even admits that it is being added to our water, our foods, our cosmetics, and everything within our day-to-day lives. But I just want to remind people that children, newborn children, are actually being injected with aluminium. And here we have a list of. Can we blow that up at all or not? Can we zoom? We can't really.
I can't at the moment.
Sorry.
No.
Okay, but if anyone wants to go and have a look at ingredients in vaccines, they will see every single vaccine, I think apart from 2, has aluminium in them. And we are now having proof from doctors and professors that aluminium causes damage to the brain. So well done, Telegraph, for reporting on this. I think we've got just one more slide with some more vaccines on it. So, yeah, there you go. I mean, if you can see that and freeze your screen, you have a look. Aluminium phosphate. And the list is endless. And as I say, underarm deodorants, where all your pores are open up very thin there and your glands are there. Check on your bottles of deodorant. Check on everything that you have, cosmetics and body care, and you will find aluminium in them. So check it out.
And watch the Telegraph to see what happens
well done,
with that
Telegraph.
report.
Congratulations.
The next thing is they'll be shut down or something. Well, the government's never got money for healthcare or education or potholes in the road. They've always got money for wars. And of course, the government doesn't seem to care if there's a little bit of fraud going on. But interesting that Alison Saunders' very own Crown Prosecution Service is boasting that they're going to start proceedings against former member of the European Parliament, Ashley Mote. And I think they've come up with a total of 9 charges related to misuse of public money and fraud. I think we've got a picture of the gentleman here. Yeah. Now, Ashley Mote has been very outspoken about things going wrong in the European Union, including money. And a lot of people are saying, can we trust the Crown Prosecution Service here? Or is it possible this man is being fitted up? If anybody out there still believes the Crown Prosecution Service is independent and objective, well, we don't think so. Look at Melanie Shaw. So there's a little bit of work to be done on what's happening with this gentleman. And let's remember that if we go back to 2002, okay, the article's 2004, but Marta Andreasen was the lady who started to really blow the whistle on what she said was massive fraud and corruption within the European Union. Her reward for that was to be sacked, hounded and bullied. And I know that she's still fairly scared of speaking out because of the threats and intimidation she's had against her. So we've got Ashley Mote is charged with fraud, but the EU Commission, presiding over massive fraud with our public money, continues to carry on unchallenged or investigated. And then we should just remind ourselves, of course, that it was EU Commission Vice President Neil Kinnock who was going to work with Olaf to stamp out fraud within the European Union. But of course, he did nothing of the sort. He just continued to take huge paychecks from that organisation and then quietly disappeared while the fraud and corruption in the EU carries on. So the fact that David Cameron or Blair or Miliband or any of the other mainstream politicians are dealing with the European Union means, of course, they're also committing criminal offences with taxpayers' money. Funny, we've just mentioned the key players. Here he is, David Cameron. And the Bureau of Investigative Journalism has been doing some pretty good digging into the big fundraising events around the Tories. And they're pointing out that at one of the, I think they call them a black and white dinner, you'd got doorstep lenders, property moguls, controversial bankers worth about 22 billion, all sitting at tables with the top Tories, about £1,000 for a place. But there's no suggestion that guests discuss either policy or their business interests with the ministers.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And a spokesperson for the Conservative Party said all donations to the Conservative Party are declared and published by the Electoral Commission. Any suggestion that policy is influenced by donations is malicious and defamatory and will be treated as such. So you got it there. Don't dare accuse any of us of being corrupt. But here we are with the Bilderberg meeting back in June 2012. And what did we have? Well, we had British politicians meeting behind closed doors with bankers, some of whom had been involved in the LIBOR rate rigging.
Was it June 2012? Was it June 2013? I might have been wrong.
I did ask you, Lou, so it's going to be...
It could be my fault. I think it was June 2013.
Okay.
I can't remember.
Well, it doesn't...
I could have got my years wrong.
It doesn't matter because here we had
the message is
this
still the
mix
same.
of British politicians behind closed doors with some individuals who were linked to the massive fraud and corruption in the banks. And of course, were there any minutes of the meetings? Do we know what was said? No, we don't. But just like the fundraising, trust us, we're all straight, etc. Filthy rich, really.
Sorry, it was my fault. I'm sorry, Brian. It was 2013.
Yeah, okay, there we are.
Sorry. Okay, Credit Suisse wealth report has been released today, and it shows that the 1% are getting even wealthier, owning more than 48% of global wealth. It also calculates that global wealth has risen to a new record at 263 trillion, more than twice the 117 trillion which was calculated for 2000. It also showed that the UK has record rising inequality, and that we are the only country, G7 country, who has rising inequality. In the report, they highlight that nowadays the pattern of wealth distribution in the UK is very typical for a developed economy. So if people want to go and have a look at this rich list, they can find it here.
Right.
There you go, Research Institute and Thought Leadership from Credit Suisse Research.
Thought leadership.
Thought leadership.
Intelligent communities leading outside authority. This is the future. Only the filthy rich will be allowed to remain on the planet, and the rest of us will be vaccinated
and put into FEMA camps.
Into oblivion. What are we going to do about it? Well, we certainly need to talk about our health. So we're going to say, if you haven't booked yet, do come along to the conference weekend of the 1st, 2nd of November. Second day is on the important subject of your health and how to improve it.
I think they are going to mention Ebola as well, and how to protect against it as well, if it really comes here.
Okay, and of course what we're seeing in the UK at the moment is our nation state being ripped apart with massive attacks on the Constitution and common law, and particularly trial by jury. So if you're now starting to get concerned about the speed of the breakup of UK, you need to come along to the conference, where we're not only going to be talking about causes, but talking about some of the positive things that we can actually do to stem the tide.
Got some good speakers as well.
Indeed.
Okay. T-shirts, anyone wants? We've got Bradbury Pound ones. We've got loads of different ones. You can have a look on the website. And obviously we have our bumper stickers, and we have the flyers and leaflets on the UK column if you want them for your groups to start distributing. Email Carol, CAROLE, at ukcolumn.org, and she can sort that out for you.
And we'll just give you a reminder, we haven't got any immediate news on Melanie Shaw. We will tweet something out the moment we hear it, but we're hoping that at some stage this week she could be released on bail, but we just have to wait for the detail on that. That's it.
Tomorrow.
Thanks for joining us. Bye-bye.
Bye.